Hi everyone, I'm Rohas Nagpal and I'm very excited to announce the launch of my latest book, The Cryptocurrency Investigation and Forensics Manual. The objective of this live session is to tell you how the book is structured, what are the kind of topics that are covered in it. And as always, whatever questions you have, please feel free to post them and I'll answer them for you. Let me just quickly share the screen. Now, the way in which I've designed this book is it is designed to be a manual and not a textbook. So, a lot of emphasis has been given to checklists and best practices, things that you would actually do at a crime scene or actually do when you're investigating a particular case. So, when you're going through it, you'll realize that the checklists are all with a different color. So it's a slightly yellowish color background those pages will have. So you instantly know that that's a checklist. You can feel free to print them also and carry them physically if you want at a crime scene. Now, let me just quickly walk you through what all the manual covers. So it starts off with the first module or the first section, which is crypto crimes and investigation methods. Obviously, one of the most important topics. Now, in that, the first thing that I do is talk about how to think like an investigator. Now, I've been investigating cybercrime specifically for over 25 years now. And what I realize is it's not always just about the evidence, it's a lot more with how the investigator thinks. And sometimes things may seem very obvious, but then they turn out to be completely different from what you initially thought. So, in this chapter, I talk about using the ABC rule, how to avoid the biases that investigators can have, how to ask better questions, test out multiple explanations, and then use the 6C method to make the right hypothesis and help you to solve the case much better. After that, we move into probably the most important case ever, I would say, and not just from a crypto point of view, but if we really look at investigations, I would say the Silk Road case completely changed the way in which law enforcement and tax enforcement officials actually do investigation. So this case involved everything. There were darknet markets, there was murder for hire, there was cryptocurrency being used, there was money laundering, there was virtually everything that you can imagine in that one case. Now, that case went through all the stages from the arrest by the FBI, investigations, conviction, the appeal against it, and finally all the way to the Supreme Court. And then years later, the accused in that case was pardoned by the US president also. So it's a very interesting, very detailed journey. So we move on to understanding how that case really worked. And then all the official documents for that are also available. So along with this manual, there is an online companion, you could say. So that is called as C4 Learn. And in that, after every chapter, after every section, you'll be able to see a lot of reference material. So there are about 700 plus pages of official court documents, again, which are available to you. So after you read the case in the manual, you would be able to access all those and then take a quiz to make sure you've actually understood how that case works. I can see some questions coming in. I'm going to answer them in some time. Let me first walk you through the book. Then we move on to a lot of crimes. So starting with the early Bitcoin thefts and exchange hacks, the Ponzi schemes and investment scams, the ransomware, malware, crypto enabled, DeFi exploits, rug pulls, darknet market, social engineering. All of these, many cases are covered under each of these categories. So you would understand how the cases are and what is the investigator's perspective when we look at such kind of cases. I've also started to add a lot of checklists to those particular sections and more will keep coming. Just remember, the manual is not a textbook which is locked. It's a growing document. So regularly I'm going to be adding based on feedback, based on what I think is needed. I'm going to be adding a lot of content. So when you log in to do your course, you will be able to download the latest version, which will have all the updates that you need. After we look at all these cases, we then look at the crypto ecosystem. So what are the different kind of players which are in that? How to investigate cryptocurrency financial crimes, technical exploits, crypto-enabled money laundering, and the use of cryptocurrency in organized crime. So whether that's darknet, whether that's drug trafficking, whether that's firearms trade, illegal gambling, all those various kinds of cases in which cryptocurrency is actually used, you'll be able to understand how to investigate those cases. Then we move on to the blockchain fundamental for investigators. Now, obviously, blockchain, crypto, smart contracts, these have a lot of complex technological aspects to them. As an investigator, you're not becoming a programmer or you're not going to develop your own blockchain network. So you obviously do not need that level of technical knowledge in that, but still you do need to understand certain very important concepts, like, what are blocks, what are transactions, what is a consensus mechanism, why do we say blockchains are immutable, in fact are they immutable, which is also not 100% of the case. So you'll understand those things. You'll understand what a mempool is, what a miner does, and how to use all these things from a forensic point of view. Then another very critical thing is, which many people actually don't know, blockchains can function very differently. So the way in which Bitcoin functions, it uses something called UTXO accounting model. Ethereum, on the other hand, uses an accounts-based model. And then there are systems which use hybrid. So it's important for you to understand these record-keeping models. That's covered. Then we go into obviously one of the most critical things, which is keys, addresses, and signing behavior. So, what does a key look like? What does an address look like? What does a wallet look like? How are these different signature algorithms actually used? You'll understand that. Then we move into smart contracts and token standards, because depending upon the kind of crime, depending on the chain, the tokens could be very different. So for example, on Ethereum you would have ERC20 or 721 or 1155, but on Binance you would have a BEP20, on Tron you would have a TRC20, on Solana you'll have an SPL. So understanding how these tokens are, what are the differences between them, what are upgradable contracts, what are contract vulnerabilities, you learn all that. Then we move into something called on-chain versus off-chain data. So when we say on-chain, we are talking about data which is on the blockchain, and then off-chain we are talking about things like oracles, and we are talking about the side chains which come in, the bridges which come in, the metadata which comes in. All of that is going to be covered. Finally, that section ends with blockchain explorers, all the various types and what you should use in which case, and what kind of data you can actually expect from a blockchain explorer. Then we move into the third section, which is crypto assets, instruments, and on-chain mechanism. So now there are more than 50 types of assets and protocol types. You're going to get an exposure to all of those. Then we are going to move into specific ecosystem-based investigations. So the first one is how to investigate the Bitcoin ecosystem. Then we move into Ethereum, Tron, and the Binance Smart Chain. I would say about 90% of the crimes probably get covered in these. Then there's also Solana, which comes into the picture. So we look at how to investigate the Solana ecosystem. After having seen these specific blockchains, we move into privacy coins. So you may have heard about Moneros and Zcash and others being used by a lot of very savvy criminals. So we'll understand how privacy coins work. And in each of these, you're going to have practical checklists that you can actually use while doing investigation and analysis. Then we move into stable coins like USDT, which you may have heard a lot about. Those are being used by a lot of criminals also. So we'll understand how to investigate stable coins. Then investigating centralized exchanges, decentralized exchanges, and the DeFi ecosystem. Finally, we end that with the freezable tokens. In fact, that's something a lot of people don't know about. You can actually, blockchains are not as decentralized as people think. Do you know that cryptos can be frozen at various levels, even on a public blockchain? So we're going to understand which are these blockchains and how exactly freezing can be done and how is that benefiting the investigation point of view. So we look into that. Then we go into section 4, where we talk about investigating secure communications, anonymity infrastructure, and hidden internet ecosystems. So the first thing that we cover in that is investigating parallel internets. So a lot of us think that there's just one internet. Some of us think, no, there is a second one called as Tor, but actually there are more. There's also I2P, there is Freenet, there is Lokinet, there is ZeroNet, IPFS, and other anonymity-focused architectures. So for each of them, you're going to understand basically what they are from a tech point of view. And then there are checklists that if in a particular case you come across Tor, you come across Freenet, what are you supposed to do? How are you supposed to carry your investigation forward? Then we move into encrypted messaging platform. So almost everybody that you investigate is going to be using some kind of an encrypted messaging platform. That could be WhatsApp, Signal, Telegram, Session, Threema, Discord, or any of these others. So we'll look at, metadata, control, operational attribution. Again, checklists are given, so you'd understand how to investigate those. Then we look into encrypted email services. Now here we talk about, I'm sure many of you have used them in the past, but there are a lot of these email services which offer an additional level of encryption as compared to, say, what a Google will give you or a Gmail will give you. So we'll look into that again with a lot of checklists. Then we are going to look into decentralized hosting and storage protocols like IPFS, RV, and Filecoin, because you need to understand, what do we mean by publication, naming, pinning, payment, stewardship, and how do we really figure out who controls that particular storage protocol that you are investigating. We then go into the final part of that section, which is decentralized domains. So we take a deeper look into how those work. Then we come to section 5, which is about wallet forensics. Now, in that, we look at the different kinds of wallets. So there is custodial versus non-custodial. There are hot and cold storage. In that, we look at reuse patterns, peel chains, dusting, and understanding, how exactly can these wallets be used and misused. Then we go into the wallet identifiers, keys, and their forensic artifacts. Then we look into the software wallets. Now, those are usually the kinds you would put on your browser, on your mobile. So we're talking about things like MetaMask and Phantom or Trust Wallet. Then we go to hardware wallets like Ledger, Trezor, Keystone. Then we look at custodial wallets and exchange infrastructure, where we need to understand what do we mean by a pooled wallet, hot cold segregation or batching, internal ledgers of the exchanges, what kind of compliance records they have, and then how do we get our subpoenas into that. Then we look into the multi-signature wallet. So you're usually going to find this where there are larger teams or DAOs which are working. So wallets that they use will usually be multi-sig. So we'll understand how to handle those. Then we look at wallet seizure protocols and evidence handling. So suppose you come across a device or a seed phrase, how are you supposed to seize them? Suppose there is a volatile state which is there. What are you supposed to do in that? What is the chain of custody to be followed? Then we look at cross-chain wallets and linking wallets to real-world identities. That obviously is another very, very critical aspect. In fact, if you look at the Silk Road case, the founder of Silk Road, Ross Ulbricht, had actually used a particular Gmail account to create his LinkedIn account also. And that same Gmail account he initially used to do a lot of promotions for Silk Road. So even that tracking was able to help the code in understanding that this is the person who was actually running Silk Road. So attributing and connecting wallets to end users is also a very, very crucial element of what you're going to learn. Then there's just 2 more sections to go. We look at section 6, where we are going to look at field ops. So that means when you actually go to the scene, how do you identify and classify cryptocurrency evidence? How do you seize devices? How do you preserve volatile state? And how do you handle key material? Finally, we look at digital asset seizure, the documentation and the on-site coordination. And then we go into the last section, which is the legal process. So first we need to understand what are the kind of legal rules, regulations that we need to follow for different countries like India, UAE, US, UK, European Union, all the important jurisdictions. How do we handle evidence and their admissibility so that tomorrow when we go to the court of law and we present the case, it is actually upheld and our evidence is actually meeting the standards required by the court. Then we look at the courtroom communication narratives, how to train an expert witness, how to visualize what kind of questions the defense is going to put up, how are they going to try to break your evidence, and how is it that we can make sure that it withstands that. We look at data governance, and finally we look at the case coordination. The manual will then has its glossary of terms, references for further reading, and a tool selection matrix. So depending upon the kind of case you're looking at, what is the tool that you would be using. Now, like I mentioned, along with this manual, there is the online companion site called C4 Learn. So for every chapter, every section, you'll be able to connect there and you'll be able to download videos. You'll be able to look at some of the tools. And I built a lot of case studies, practical real world case studies, actually running on decentralized storage networks, actually running on various blockchains. You'll be able to do all those also. So the manual is to be read or used along with the learning platform. It goes together. And a lot of tools, videos and all will also be available on that. Now, let me quickly take some of your questions. Is there a good scope in this space? Can we make a great career? Well, definitely. See, I've been an investigator for over 25 years now. Initially, I did work in cybercrime investigation. And since about 2011, I've specialized in cryptocurrency investigation, which you can consider as a sub part of cybercrime investigation, a specialized part of it. And well, I've been doing it since 2011. So definitely, I think it's a very good way. And the benefits are that you can actually handle clients across the world. So of course, earlier you had to physically travel across the world to handle cases. Now, a lot of the cases, especially crypto related, you can handle them from wherever you are. You don't have to specifically travel for that, but of course, whatever you prefer. Is there a good earning potential? Definitely there is. Is there any risk for the investigator as it involves criminals? Yeah, that's a very good question. So, I'll be very honest with you. Yes, in the past, there have been some very sensitive cases that I have investigated. Although I've never really personally been threatened or attacked by anybody, but definitely that's something that can happen. Yes, you are dealing with criminals. So that element of risk is always there. But then if you are working in a corporate environment, see, it's not necessary that when you do cryptocurrency crime analysis and forensics, it's not necessary that you're working for the law enforcement only. You could be working for a company, a crypto exchange, a wallet provider, a virtual asset service provider. In that case, you're not really going to come across too many criminals per se. And again, try to understand, most of these criminals are not going to be the hardened, violent criminals. They're usually going to be white collar criminals. So I wouldn't think there's too much of a threat in that. But yeah, that's a very interesting question to think about. If there are any other questions, please feel free to ask me. Yeah, I can see a lot more. Let me just see. Thank you very much for running us through the manual. On the cases covered in the manual in the jurisdiction, specific or spread across different? Very good question again. So, because like many technologies, even blockchain and cryptocurrency primarily started off in the US. So, some of the earliest and biggest cases that we've seen happened in the US, starting with Silk Road, even if you look at the FTX case. But wherever possible, I've also brought in legal documents from many other cases. From an understanding point of view, I've covered all over the world. But from official documents, I can only give you what has actually happened in courts. And most of that has happened in the US. So that is why the US jurisdiction gets more coverage. But as and when new cases come up, irrespective of the jurisdiction, we cover them all. In India, there are many such cases, but they're still pending at the investigation or the court level. So till the judgments come out, we can't really study the official documents. But that's a good question. How would you find clients through your network? Yeah, very good question. So what we are doing is that once you finish the course and you've passed it, you will be listed on our website and our platform, along with how you scored and which cities and countries you're available for business in. And then anybody in the world who needs investigators would be able to use that. So kind of consider it like a specialized version of LinkedIn, but specifically for cryptocurrency and blockchain security and crime investigation. So we will also try our best to get you a lot of cases. How would we find client? Yeah, I've answered that. How long would it take someone to be good at it? Very good question. Now, the way I've designed the course is it's a 4-month course. Of course, you can do it faster if you're ready to spend more time. I will be very honest with you, it is not very easy to do. You are going to need to learn a lot of concepts, do a lot of practicals. But if you're ready to work hard, 4 months is good enough to learn everything, do a lot of the case studies, and then you enter the real world where with every investigation you are going to think better, you're going to be able to handle things better. That's a lifelong learning process. But I would say after about a year of investigation, you should be pretty good at it. Can we start our own service after this? And absolutely, of course you can. And I would love to help you in whatever way I can, but definitely you can start your own consultancy service for this. And yes, the other experts that you'll be able to find through our platform, you can definitely partner with them also and start it off. Now, one thing which I think is a good thing to remember is there are different languages across the world. So which language you're comfortable with also becomes an asset for you. So if you are very good at Portuguese, for example, Brazil may be a very good market for you. If you're good at Spanish, Spain and other countries may be good markets for you. So consider that also as an asset that you have. And you may be able to get clients even better than someone else because your expertise in the language is there. So even that's something to keep in mind. For the benefit of everyone, I'm asking, yeah, sure. Who will hire you? Very good question. So there are multiple kinds of places where you could get hired. So one is law enforcement agencies. So for example, I've worked with law enforcement, tax enforcement agencies in 18 different countries over my career. So they're definitely one big target. In fact, for many cyber crimes, I've also been approached by military agencies, by banks, by insurance companies, by software companies, all sorts of these. So you could look at, again, law and tax enforcement. You could look at the global organizations like Interpol, which are there. You could also look at VASPs. Now, across the world, we have so many VASPs. That's virtual asset service providers. They could be providing DEX services, centralized exchange services, managed wallets. There are hundreds, if not thousands of such agencies. And at some point of time, all of them do require this. Like every time you hear about a technical exploit that happens, and it happens all the time, multi-million dollar kind of crimes happen. Like in those cases, they again need people like you, they need investigators like you. And across the board, you're going to see that this kind of forensic investigation is being done by experts like you would become. So very recently, for example, I think the most recent I could think of is in India was where WazirX, one of the exchanges, that had been hacked, and then they hired an agency which did a very detailed forensic analysis for them. So those are the kind of things that you will also be able to do. Uh, how many attempts and does someone have the exam? Uh, don't worry too much about the attempt part of it. I hope you're able to clear everything in the first attempt. So on the website is very clearly explained for each of the skills. So there are 7 skills. Each of the skills there is going to be one test, and then there is going to be one on the finals. I'll go deeper into this during the launch, official launch of the course, which I plan to do on Monday. Today I wanted to focus primarily on the manual. On Monday's session, I will walk you through in great detail about what the course interface looks like, what you're going to learn, how you're going to do the quizzes and the exams. Can we get a link to the learning platform? Like I said, on Monday, I'll be walking you through the whole thing. So I'll show you exactly step by step how that platform works and how you can use that. I am learning Web3 security. Will cryptocurrency forensics help me improve my career? Definitely, it will. So when you look at it, security is a broad term. And in many ways, I consider investigation and forensics to be a part of security. So you can always say that, it could be proactive security, things that you do before the attack. And then there is preventive, and then there is reactive. So now that the attack has happened or the security vulnerability has been exploited, how do we investigate? How do we prosecute? How do we take it to court? So ultimately, all of that is part of the same thing. And ideally, you should have an end-to-end expertise in that. Good questions, and definitely I'll love to answer more. If you have any, please feel free to post them here. Otherwise, even later, you can go below this video on YouTube and you can post your questions and I'll answer them. Also, join our learning WhatsApp group that we have, and we discuss a lot of these issues there also. So I think, yeah, that's about it for now. So great. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll connect with you again on Monday. I see another question. Just give me a second. No, I think that was it. Okay. So I'll see you again on Monday, where I'll walk you through the details of the course and how the learning platform is structured. Bye bye.